Welcome to the Legacy Project podcast, where we explore the art of storytelling and how sharing your journey can create a lasting impact. I'm your host, Don Fessenden, and today we're diving into one of the most powerful tools a writer can use to deepen their storytelling: metaphors and symbolism. Some of the most memorable stories, whether in books, speeches, or even personal memoirs, stick with us because they go beyond just telling us what happened. They make us feel something on a deeper level. And often, that's because of metaphors and symbols. A river that represents change, a childhood home that symbolizes safety, a broken clock that reflects lost time. These aren't just objects or images, they carry meaning beyond their literal presence. They help readers connect with your story in ways that are both personal and universal. So today, we're going to break down how to use metaphors and symbolism to elevate your storytelling. Whether you're writing your life story, a personal essay, or even just journaling, learning to think metaphorically can add richness and emotional depth to your words. Let's get started. I once heard someone describe grief as an ocean wave that knocks you down just when you think you've caught your breath. And immediately I felt it, because grief is hard to explain in just words. But when you compare it to the unpredictable force of an ocean, suddenly it becomes something you can feel. That's the power of a metaphor. It takes something abstract, an emotion, an experience, a lesson, and ties it to something familiar, something sensory, something real. Metaphors help us make complex emotions easier to understand. Instead of saying, "I felt overwhelmed," you might say, "I felt like I was drowning in a sea of expectations." Create vivid imagery. Instead of saying, "He was angry," you might say, "His words hit like a hammer on cold steel." Make stories more memorable. The best metaphors stick with readers long after they've finished reading. Think of famous phrases like "the road less traveled" or "a house divided." They carry weight beyond the words themselves. If you've ever struggled to explain an experience, ask yourself, what does this remind me of? What image, sound, or feeling captures what I'm trying to say? That's where a metaphor begins. Metaphors are one thing, but symbolism takes storytelling even deeper. Symbolism is when an object, event, or image carries a meaning beyond itself. Think about your own life. Are there objects, places, or routines that hold special meaning for you? Maybe it's a worn-out baseball glove that reminds you of childhood summers with your dad, a family recipe that represents generations of love and tradition, an old, dented car that symbolizes freedom and adventure from your younger years. One storyteller I worked with wrote about a tree in his backyard. It was just a tree, until he realized it had been there through every season of his life. He climbed it as a boy, carved his initials into it as a teenager, sat under it during hard times, and watched it grow as he grew. That tree became a powerful symbol in his memoir, representing change, endurance, and time itself. Symbolism works best when it's personal. Instead of forcing meaning onto an object, discover what already exists. Look at the things around you and ask, what does this represent in my life? That's how authentic symbolism is born. One mistake I see writers make is forcing metaphors. Not every sentence needs one, and if they feel unnatural, they can take the reader out of the story rather than drawing them in. Here are a few tips for writing strong, natural metaphors. Keep it simple. The best metaphors are clear and relatable. Instead of saying, "His patience was a precariously balanced Jenga tower teetering on the edge of collapse," try, "His patience was wearing thin, like a frayed rope about to snap." Use sensory details. The more you can see, hear, feel, or taste a metaphor, the stronger it becomes. Instead of saying, "She was nervous," try, "Her stomach twisted like a wrung-out dishcloth." Make sure it fits the tone of your story. If you're writing about a childhood memory, playful metaphors work well. If you're writing about loss, metaphors should match the depth of emotion. And most importantly, don't overdo it. Think of metaphors like seasoning in a dish. Too much, and it overwhelms the flavor. Just the right amount, and it enhances the entire experience. Sometimes, the best way to understand symbolism is to look for it in the stories around us. Think about classic books or movies. In The Great Gatsby, the green light at the end of Daisy's dock represents dreams, longing, and the unreachable future. In To Kill a Mockingbird, the mockingbird itself symbolizes innocence and the idea of protecting those who cannot protect themselves. In movies like The Shawshank Redemption, the poster on Andy's prison wall symbolizes hope and freedom, until the moment we realize it was hiding his escape. Now, look at your own life. What objects, places, or moments have shaped you? What symbols appear throughout your personal journey? Once you start looking, you'll see them everywhere. So, how do you start weaving metaphors and symbolism into your own writing? Here's a simple exercise. Think of a strong memory from your life. Maybe it's a childhood moment, a big life transition, or a time of struggle. Describe it in literal terms first. What happened? Who was there? What did you feel? Now, look for metaphors or symbolism. Does this memory remind you of something? Is there an object or image that stands out? For example, if you're writing about moving to a new city and feeling lost, you might realize that you kept circling the same block while trying to find your new apartment. Suddenly, that becomes a metaphor. Feeling lost wasn't just literal, it was emotional too. These small moments, these tiny details, make stories powerful. As we close today's episode, I want to challenge you. Write one metaphor this week. It doesn't have to be complicated. Look at your day, your emotions, your surroundings, and describe something using a metaphor. And if you notice an object or place in your life that feels significant, explore it. Ask yourself why it matters. That might just be the symbol that ties your story together. If today's episode helped you see storytelling in a new way, let me know. Connect with me on social media or visit my website. And if you want to dive deeper into crafting meaningful stories, check out my book, The Legacy Project, a guide to sharing your story. Thank you for joining me on the Legacy Project podcast. Your story has depth, layers, meaning, and metaphors and symbolism are just tools to help bring them to life. Start writing, start sharing, and leave your mark. I'll see you next time.